There's a moment in life when everything feels like it's falling apart. Your relationships are shifting, your routines don't satisfy, and the future feels foggy. And in that exact moment, you might whisper to yourself, why now? Why this? But let me tell you something I've learned through pain, loss, growth, and transformation. When life starts to feel like it's unraveling, it's not falling apart, it's falling into place. See, when God is about to give you something big, He doesn't start by handing you the blessing. He starts by refining the vessel. And you are that vessel. We all say we want the blessing. We say we're ready for the next level. But very few of us are prepared for what that actually takes. Because the truth is, before elevation comes elimination. Before the new can enter, the old must exit. And here's the harsh part most people don't talk about. It never looks the way you expected it to. You imagine growth would feel good. You imagine purpose would bring instant peace. You imagine the path would be paved in confirmation and applause. But it's not. It's paved in pruning. God doesn't just deliver greatness like a gift package on your doorstep. He prepares you to become the kind of person who can carry greatness with grace. And preparation doesn't feel like praise. It feels like pressure, like discomfort, like losing things you thought you couldn't live without. You're not being punished. You're being positioned. And positioning often starts with being pulled away from the things that once anchored you. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like something was slipping through your fingers, something you once prayed for, fought for, believed in with all your heart, maybe a job, a relationship, a place, and just as you thought you had found your rhythm, it disappeared? It's confusing, right? But let's shift the perspective. What if that loss wasn't a rejection, but a redirection? What if the things you're losing are the very things that can't come with you into the next chapter? You see, before the blessing comes, the breaking. Before the reward comes, the refinement. God is not just interested in your destination. He's deeply invested in your transformation. Because here's the truth. If He gave you what you asked for too early, it could crush you. Think about it. If you give someone the crown but not the character, the power will destroy them. If you hand someone the spotlight but not the discipline, the fame will consume them. If you pour out a blessing but the foundation isn't strong, it'll all collapse. God's blessings are weighty. And before He gives you the weight, He gives you the workout of letting go, the workout of trusting when it makes no sense, the workout of being stripped, stretched, and surrendered. This is what I call the sacred stretch, when your soul is being pulled beyond what it's used to, and it hurts. But in that stretch, new space is created. That space, that's where the blessing will land. And I know this isn't easy. I've been there. I've walked through seasons where everything I thought I needed vanished. I lost friends I thought were forever. I left jobs I once called dreams. I stood in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back at me. But I look back now and I see it so clearly. I wasn't being destroyed. I was being designed. That season of loss, it was also the season of alignment. That moment of silence, it was actually the preparation for the message. That heartbreak, it was breaking open space for something far more sacred. So if you're feeling the discomfort right now, don't panic. It's a sign that something is shifting. It's a sign that you are being prepared, not punished. Just like a tree must be pruned to bear more fruit, your life must go through a process of removal to receive more abundance. The leaves that fall weren't failures, they were finished. And I want you to hear this clearly. When God starts to prune, it's not because He's trying to take something from you. It's because He's making space for something far greater than you ever imagined. But here's where most people get stuck. We confuse the pruning for punishment. We confuse the discomfort for danger. We think the absence of ease means the absence of God. But it's the opposite. It's often in your greatest pain that God is doing His greatest preparation. That's where your character is formed. That's where your self-discipline is built. That's where your emotional resilience is tested and trained. Don't run from the discomfort. Sit with it. Let it teach you. Let it strip away what no longer serves you. Because that pain you're feeling right now, that ache of uncertainty, that sting of letting go, that pressure in your chest, that's not weakness. That's weight training for your next level. God is giving you the strength now to carry what's coming next. So if everything feels like it's shifting, dissolving, or stretching beyond what you think you can handle, remember this: you're not breaking down, you're breaking through. Now, take a breath, look at your life. What is God asking you to release so he can increase? A reflective question. What are you holding on to right now that might be keeping you from receiving what's next? If this resonated with you, leave a comment with your thoughts. Hit the like button to support this message. And don't forget to subscribe, because this journey of rising into your next chapter is just beginning. Thank you for being here. I'm so grateful we're walking this path together. Let's talk about the season most people pray to avoid. The season where things don't make sense. The season where your faith is tested, your patience stretched, and your strength questioned. It's the season of testing. Now, let me say this clearly. Everyone wants the promise. Very few are willing to pass the process. We love the idea of breakthrough, but we resist the breakdown it requires. See, when life gets hard, our first instinct is to ask, why is this happening to me? But here's a more empowering question. What is this developing in me? Because the moment you ask that, the pain becomes purpose, the delay becomes discipline, and the struggle becomes sacred. Let me share something personal. There was a period in my life when everything looked still on the outside, but inside, I was battling self-doubt, anxiety, and fear of the unknown. I was meditating every morning, showing up to my responsibilities, even inspiring others. But behind the scenes, I felt stuck, like I was moving, but going nowhere. It felt like life hit pause. But that pause wasn't punishment. It was preparation. You know why? Because in the season of testing, the work isn't happening around you. It's happening inside you. Let's take it back to ancient wisdom. Think about the story of David. Before he was king, he was a shepherd. Before he held a crown, he held a slingshot. And before he sat on the throne, he spent years in the wilderness being hunted, rejected, and misunderstood. The wilderness didn't delay his destiny, it defined it. He learned courage not in battle, but in obscurity. He built character not through comfort, but through conflict. He discovered purpose not in a palace, but in isolation. And David's story isn't unique. Joseph was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and locked in prison, not because he was cursed, but because he was being positioned to become second in command in Egypt, positioned to save nations, positioned to fulfill his purpose. See, God doesn't test you to see if you'll fail. He tests you to forge you. And forging doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the shadows. We live in a culture addicted to results, but transformation doesn't come from the visible. It comes from the invisible, the inner work, the emotional endurance, the spiritual grit that no one sees but God does. So if you're in a season of waiting, hear me clearly. You are not being forgotten. You are being fortified. Every challenge is a question. Will you fold or will you rise? Will you react or will you reflect? Will you give up or will you grow through it? We often want to skip this phase. We say things like, I'm ready now. I've waited long enough. I've done the work. But if we received what we wanted too soon, we'd misuse it. We'd misplace our identity in it. We'd mishandle it. A tree can't bear fruit if its roots aren't deep. And your roots don't grow during the harvest. They grow in the drought. That's why this season matters. You don't develop trust when everything's clear. You build it when nothing island. You don't develop patience when things move fast. You develop it in the delays. You don't build strength on sunny days. You build it in the storm. And that's what makes the season of testing sacred. It refines who you are. It reveals what you really believe. It removes what no longer serves your future. Let me say something uncomfortable but necessary. If you're asking God for more, prepare to be tested more. Why? Because God will never give you what you want at the expense of what you need. You may want success. He knows you need strength. You may want clarity. He knows you need character. You may want the next chapter. He knows you need closure from the last one. This is divine wisdom. He's not holding it back from you. He's holding it for you until you're ready to carry it with grace. But here's the hard part. Tests rarely come labeled. They show up as delays, as disappointment, as detours. And the question is, can you trust when nothing makes sense? Because trust is the real test. Anyone can be faithful when life is easy. The true test is when everything's uncertain, will you still show up? Show up to your goals. Show up to your growth. Show up to your relationship with yourself and with the divine. You see, this season, this wilderness, this waiting room of your life, it isn't where you're meant to stop. It's where you're meant to transform. It's not wasted time. It's workshop time. Just like David sharpened his courage in the field, just like Joseph grew his wisdom in prison, you are being shaped in silence, refined in obscurity, strengthened in secret. But make no mistake, when the time is right, you will rise. Not because you forced the door open, but because you became the kind of person who no longer needs to knock because the door was built for you. So today, if it feels like you're stuck in the hallway, don't bang on closed doors. Focus on becoming who you're meant to be when the right one opens. Let this test strengthen your patience. Let this test sharpen your discipline. Let this test deepen your trust, not in outcomes, but in your inner resilience. Because when the season of testing is over, you won't just receive a blessing. You'll have become the blessing. Let me ask you something deeply personal. Have you ever woken up and felt off? Not broken, not sad, just unsettled. Like the life you're living no longer fits who you're becoming? That's not confusion. That's not anxiety. That's not some random mood swing. That's a spiritual stirring, a whisper from within, nudging you to pay attention, not to the noise around you, but to the shift within you. And that shift, it's sacred. It's God's way of saying, I'm calling you higher now. You might not be able to name it. You might not have the language for it, but deep in your soul, you feel it. You were made for more than this. Not more fame, not more money, not more applause, more alignment, more meaning, more truth. See, when God is about to expand your life, He starts by expanding your soul. And that expansion, it rarely starts with excitement. It starts with restlessness. You no longer feel at home in the places you once loved. You no longer feel peace in the conversations that once energized you. The relationships, routines, and roles you used to cling to now feel tight, like clothes you've outgrown. This isn't something to fear. It's something to follow, because the stirring in your spirit is the signal that you're stepping into a new chapter, a higher assignment, a deeper purpose. But here's the challenge. When the stirring begins, the clarity doesn't arrive all at once. We expect a 10-step roadmap. Instead, God gives us a whisper. We want a billboard. He gives us a nudge. And so we panic. We question ourselves. Why do I feel disconnected from what I used to love? Why does success feel empty now? Why do I want more but can't explain what more even means? Because your soul is evolving. And spiritual evolution is messy. It unravels your old attachments. It dissolves your outdated definitions of success. It removes the masks you didn't even realize you were wearing. It's not a crisis. It's a calling into becoming. But let me warn you, most people ignore the stirring. Why? Because it disrupts comfort. It pulls you away from the life you've mastered. It asks you to question your patterns. It invites you to walk away from what's working and walk toward what's right. And that's terrifying because it requires you to let go of control, to leave the shore without seeing the other side, to walk by faith, not by familiarity. You may feel like, but I built this life. I worked hard for it. Yes, you did. But God didn't bring you this far just to keep you comfortable. He brought you this far to keep you growing. There's a version of you that has already outgrown your current season. And the longer you ignore the stirring, the louder it will get. First, it's a whisper. Then it's a discomfort. Then it becomes unbearable until you finally surrender and say, okay, I'm ready. I want to be clear, this isn't about chasing ambition. This is about alignment. There's a difference between striving for more and being summoned into more. When God stirs your spirit, He's not asking you to hustle harder. He's inviting you to live truer. He's not demanding more of your energy. He's demanding more of your authenticity. And that's where it gets hard. Because stepping into your next level doesn't just require vision, it requires shedding. You have to shed the stories that kept you safe. You have to shed the friendships that fed your ego but starved your soul. You have to shed the habits that were once useful but are now just distractions dressed as discipline. And when that shedding begins, you will feel grief. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because letting go of who you were is the first step toward who you're becoming. That grief is holy. That grief is growth. It's like the feeling of leaving a city you've always called home, knowing it's time to move, even though you're afraid to say goodbye. Let me tell you this. Just because you don't have all the answers doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're in motion. Just because you can't explain the stirring doesn't mean it's not real. It means it's too sacred for words right now. And just because others don't understand what you're going through doesn't mean it's not valid. It means it's not theirs to understand. It's yours to follow. This is where identity transformation begins, not when everything makes sense, but when your soul speaks louder than your surroundings. If you feel a deep restlessness, if your dreams are changing shape, if you're craving a kind of life that feels more whole, more honest, more aligned, then don't ignore it. That's the beginning of your divine assignment. It's not in the future. It's not on a mountaintop. It's already within you, awakening, nudging, calling you out of the crowd. So don't wait until you have everything figured out. Move with the whisper. Trust the tension. Follow the flame. And remember, God doesn't stir your spirit without a reason. He doesn't disrupt your peace just to leave you wandering. He stirs because He's setting the stage. Not just for a change in your life, but for a transformation in your identity. There's a moment quiet, unexpected, when things start falling away. A friend goes silent. An opportunity slips through your hands. A path you were walking suddenly crumbles beneath your feet. And the first instinct is always, what did I do wrong? Why is everything being taken from me? Why is God removing so much from my life? But here's the truth we rarely want to hear. You're not being abandoned. You're being pruned. And pruning is painful. We don't talk enough about this side of growth. The part that doesn't look like expansion, the part that feels like loss, the part that breaks your heart before it builds your future. But I need you to hear me clearly. Pruning isn't punishment. It's preparation. See, we all want to be fruitful, more love, more joy, more purpose, more peace. But what if I told you that before your life multiplies, it must be cut back? In nature, if a tree is growing wild and unchecked, it won't produce its best fruit. It gets tangled, heavy. It wastes energy growing in the wrong directions. So what does the gardener do? He prunes, not to harm, but to focus. He cuts away the dead branches. He removes the ones that are growing in the wrong direction. He trims even the healthy ones if they aren't aligned with the greater design. Why? Because the tree cannot grow higher if it's too crowded, too burdened, or too divided. Now let's bring this home to you. There are relationships in your life that once felt nourishing but now feel draining. There are dreams that once fit perfectly but now feel too small. There are routines, habits, even belief systems that once protected you but now limit you. And when God starts to prune, He starts by removing what you no longer need, even if you still want it. That's why it hurts. Because the people you thought were forever disappear. The plans you were certain about collapse. The identity you wrapped yourself in, job title, social circle, even spiritual image begins to unravel. And in that moment, you feel naked, exposed, like you're losing everything. But what if this isn't the death of who you are? What if it's the birth of who you're becoming? Growth is not just adding more. Growth is also letting go. Letting go of what's outdated. Letting go of who you've outgrown. Letting go of anything, no matter how familiar, that's no longer aligned with your calling. And here's the challenge. Pruning feels like loss before it reveals itself as love. God loves you too much to let you stay in places that shrink you. He loves you too much to allow you to stay connected to what no longer serves your soul. He loves you enough to disrupt your comfort so you can step into your calling. That relationship that ended, it was holding a version of you that no longer exists. That job that didn't work out, it was tied to an identity too small for the person you're becoming. That silence between you and someone you thought you'd always have, it's not rejection, it's redirection. But here's what I want you to sit with. When God prunes, he removes not just the bad, but sometimes the good to make room for the great. And this is where most people panic because they think, but this wasn't toxic. It wasn't wrong. It wasn't hurting me. True. But it also wasn't elevating you. Not everything that's good is meant to go with you into the next season. Not every companion can walk with you into your calling. Not every comfort can coexist with your purpose. Let that sink in. You cannot carry new blessings with hands full of old baggage. You have to release before you can receive. And I know what you're thinking. Why does it feel like I'm being left with less? Because God is subtracting to multiply. You may lose the crowd to find your core. You may lose popularity to find authenticity. You may lose what felt safe to step into what's sacred. And in that space between the cutting and the blossoming, you'll feel grief. That's normal. That's human. That's holy. Grieve the loss. But don't stop there. Because what's ahead of you requires your full presence, your full faith, your full capacity. And God will not allow your future to be diluted by distractions, delayed by attachments, or destroyed by comfort. The pruning is proof that you are being positioned. It may feel like isolation, but it's actually incubation. It may look like endings, but it's actually alignment. You are not being left behind. You are being elevated. And the higher you go, the lighter you must become. So this is the invitation of the pruning season, to trust the cuts, to honor the endings, to believe that what's being removed is not more valuable than what's being made room for. You are not less without those people. You are not lost without that plan. You are not empty because of the space they left behind. You are becoming more focused, more aligned, more free. And one day, not far from now, you look around at the new fruit growing in your life, peace, purpose, passion, depth, and you'll say, thank God he cut what I couldn't. So today, I want you to ask yourself, what am I still clinging to that God is asking me to release? And when you're ready, truly ready, don't just let it go. Bless it, thank it, then step forward, lighter and clearer than you've ever been. Because the pruning isn't punishment. It's preparation for a harvest you haven't even imagined yet. Let's be real. There are times when the future feels like walking through a dense fog. You're trying your best. You're showing up. You're putting one foot in front of the other, but nothing is clear. You can't see 5 steps ahead. You don't know what's next. And in that space of uncertainty, doubt creeps in. You start asking yourself, am I on the right path? Is this delay a sign I've messed up? Why is God so quiet right now? But I want to offer you something today, not just comfort, but clarity. That fog you're walking through, it's not punishment, it's protection. Because when God is preparing something significant in your life, he doesn't always show you the whole picture. Not because he's withholding from you, but because he's developing something deeper within you: trust, faith, endurance, and patience. And that's the hardest part, isn't it? Waiting, sitting in the not yet, living in the in-between, holding on to a promise with no proof. We live in a world that's obsessed with right now. Instant results, immediate clarity, next day delivery. But God doesn't operate on your schedule. He operates on your strength. And if he gave you everything you wanted the moment you asked for it, you wouldn't be ready for it. Let me ask you a tough question. Would you rather have what you want now and lose it because you couldn't carry it? Or wait, be refined, and receive something you can sustain? Because there's a difference between achieving something and becoming someone. And becoming takes time. Becoming requires patience. Becoming is forged in the fog. Let's go deeper. When the road ahead is unclear, most people either freeze or force. They freeze in fear, doing nothing, panicking, spiraling in overthinking, or they force a path that wasn't meant for them, rushing decisions, making moves that feel good but aren't wise. But here's a sacred truth I've learned. Just because God is silent doesn't mean he's still. Let that sink in. You may not see him moving, but that doesn't mean he's idle. Behind the scenes, he's aligning the right people. He's shifting circumstances. He's closing doors that would have sabotaged you. He's building the foundation that can hold the future. He has planned for you, and you may not feel it, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. It's like being in a theater before the play begins. The curtain is down, the stage is quiet, the lights are dim, and you're sitting there wondering, is anything happening back there? Yes, everything is happening. The cast is being positioned, the props are being placed, the lights are being adjusted. The silence isn't stagnation. It's set up. God is setting the stage. And when the time is right, the curtain will rise and it will all make sense. But until then, you have to trust his timing. Let me be clear, trust doesn't mean doing nothing. It means doing the right things even when you don't see the results yet. You show up, you stay grounded, you keep your heart open, you plant the seeds even if the soil looks dry. Because you understand this, God is never late. He's never early. He's always on time, but his time doesn't run on your watch. Let's go back to the story of Joseph, sold by his own brothers, imprisoned for something he didn't do, forgotten by people he helped. From the outside, it looked like setback after setback. But from God's view, it was setup after setup, because when the time was right, Joseph was elevated, not just for his own success, but to become a savior to others. Now, here's what's wild. If Joseph had been promoted any sooner, he wouldn't have had the maturity, the wisdom, or the forgiveness to carry what God gave him. Timing wasn't just important, it was essential. And the same goes for you. You're not being denied. You're being developed. That delay you're experiencing, that's divine training. You're being taught how to trust, how to surrender control, how to walk by faith, not by sight. Let's talk about surrender for a second. We think surrender means giving up, but spiritually, surrender is strength. It's choosing peace even when the path is unclear. It's releasing the obsession with outcomes. It's saying, God, I don't know what's next, but I know who you are, and that's enough. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. And let me tell you something else. Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs happen right after the moment you're about to give up. That's why patience matters. You don't plant a seed and check it every hour to see if it's grown. You water it, you protect it, you give it time, and eventually life breaks through the soil. Same with your journey. That fog you're in now, it's hiding a breakthrough that's forming beneath the surface. So don't curse the wait. Don't rush the process. Don't abandon your faith because the timeline didn't match your expectations. Instead, ask yourself, what is this season teaching me that success never could? Because fog has a funny way of strengthening your intuition. When you can't see ahead, you have to feel your way forward. You have to listen, slow down. You have to trust not your plan, but your preparation. This is where your identity shifts. This is where you become the person who doesn't just chase blessings, but carries them with wisdom, with humility, with clarity. So today, if you're standing in uncertainty, if you're walking through a season where nothing makes sense, you don't need to see the whole path. You just need to take the next step. Because faith isn't about clarity. It's about commitment. Commit to trusting the author of your life, even when you can't read the next page. And one day, you'll look back and realize the fog didn't delay your destiny. It protected it. There comes a moment in your life, and maybe that moment is now, when something begins to stir deep within you. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not a lightning bolt from the sky. It's subtle, quiet, but relentless. A whisper that keeps coming back no matter how hard you try to ignore it. A question that lives just below the surface of your busy days. Is this all there is? That question is not a curse. It's a calling. And if you feel it, that yearning, that ache, that subtle dissatisfaction with where you are, I want you to know this. It's not that your life is broken. It's that your purpose is blooming. The truth is, the stirring you feel is sacred. It's the voice of the divine inviting you to more, not more hustle, more status, or more applause, but more alignment, more depth, more truth. You're being invited into a version of yourself you haven't fully met yet. And that's exciting, but also terrifying. Because here's what they don't tell you about the journey of transformation. Before you step into the more, you have to outgrow the now. And that's where the tension comes in. You start to feel disconnected from the things that once lit you up. Conversations that used to energize you now feel hollow. Achievements that once gave you pride now feel strangely empty. It's not because you're ungrateful. It's because your soul has outgrown the season. And when your soul outgrows a season, nothing external can satisfy the internal anymore. That's the divine stirring. It's God expanding your spirit to prepare you for a life that's not just busy, but meaningful. It's not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. But here's the catch. The path to more doesn't begin with a map. It begins with disruption. And disruption feels like restlessness. It feels like not knowing what you want, only knowing this isn't it. It feels like standing in a room that used to feel like home and realizing it doesn't anymore. That's not confusion. That's clarity in disguise. It's your inner world trying to get your attention because the version of you that you've been is no longer equipped to carry the life you're meant to live next. Let me say that again. You're not wrong. You're just evolving. And evolution always starts with discomfort because before you rise, you have to release. Release the old dreams. Release the old definitions. Release the old identities that kept you safe, but small. You don't get to take everything with you into your next season. And that's hard because we're wired to cling to what's familiar, even when it's limiting us. But if you want to walk in purpose, you have to be willing to feel uncomfortable because purpose doesn't live in the past. It doesn't live in the predictable. It lives on the edge of your obedience. And obedience means following the stirring even when the road ahead looks blurry. Let's talk about what more actually means. More doesn't mean doing more. It means being more honest, more present, more connected to your truth. More doesn't mean upgrading your schedule. It means upgrading your soul. And sometimes the path to that more isn't found in climbing higher. It's found in going deeper, deeper into your silence, deeper into your stillness, deeper into the voice that doesn't yell but knows. See, we've been trained to believe that growth means noise, that success means being seen. But some of the most powerful shifts happen in silence. Some of the most divine directions are whispered, not shouted. And that whisper you feel right now, it's asking you to look at your life and get radically honest. What are you tolerating that's draining you? What have you accepted as normal that's actually keeping you small? What dreams have you buried under fear, logic, or comfort? Because the divine stirring doesn't come to flatter your ego. It comes to wake up your spirit. It comes to disrupt your distractions, to challenge your complacency, to whisper, you were made for more. But here's the beautiful part. God doesn't stir your soul without making a way. He doesn't give you divine dissatisfaction without divine direction. You're not being teased with a better life. You're being taught to trust the process that gets you there. And that process, it won't always make sense. There will be days where nothing feels aligned, where you feel alone in your awakening, where the people around you don't understand why you've changed. That's okay. Transformation is often lonely because you're walking a path most people are too afraid to begin. But here's what I want you to remember. You're not here to live a life that just looks good. You're here to live a life that feels true. And that truth lives beyond your comfort zone. So if you feel the stirring, if you're craving more meaning, more purpose, more peace, don't silence it. Lean in, get still, listen deeper, because that whisper is the beginning of a new assignment. And the greatest version of your life is waiting on the other side of your yes. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to say, I'm ready to grow. I'm ready to trust. I'm ready to become, because the stirring in your spirit is not random. It's the sound of your destiny waking up. There comes a moment in every transformation where the inner work must become outer movement. You've healed, you've released, you've awakened. But now comes the moment that defines everything. Will you move? See, we love to talk about alignment. We meditate, we journal, we reflect, we prepare. But without obedience, without action, none of it matters. And this is where so many people get stuck. They feel the calling, they sense the timing, but they wait for more confirmation, more clarity, more certainty. Let me be honest with you. Clarity doesn't always come before obedience. It often comes through obedience. God will not always hand you a full blueprint. He might only give you one small step. But hear me on this. That step is everything. Obedience isn't about understanding the entire path. It's about trusting the one who paved it. Think about this. When Abraham was called to leave his home, he wasn't given the destination, just a direction. And yet he went. When Peter saw Jesus walking on the water, he didn't wait for the storm to stop. He stepped out, because obedience isn't about the conditions being perfect. It's about your courage being ready. You don't obey when it's easy. You obey when it's right. You obey when it scares you. You obey when your ego tells you to wait. You obey when everything in your logic says, play it safe. But your spirit says, step forward. Because the truth is, your future is not shaped by what you feel. It's shaped by what you follow. And delayed obedience is still disobedience. Let me say that again. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. We like to dress it up. I'm praying about it. I'm waiting for the right season. I'm not ready yet. But if God has stirred your heart, if you know what the next move is, and you keep hesitating, then the delay is no longer about timing, it's about fear. And fear will rob you of the life you were meant to live. Fear will whisper, what if you fail? But obedience says, what if you fly? Fear says, you don't have what it takes. Obedience says, if God called me, he will equip me. Fear says, wait until everything is in place. Obedience says, move and the pieces will fall into place. That's the paradox of divine action. You move before it makes sense. Because faith isn't passive. It's not waiting for the perfect moment. It's stepping into the imperfect moment and trusting that your step will be met with strength. Let me ask you something. What is the thing you've been avoiding? The thing you know you're meant to do, but haven't acted on? Maybe it's the conversation you've been putting off. Maybe it's the job you're meant to leave or the dream you're meant to start. Maybe it's a habit you're meant to drop or a boundary you need to set. Whatever it is, you know, and yet you're still waiting. But I want to remind you of something powerful. God does not bless hesitation. He blesses obedience. And obedience is not about perfection. It's not about knowing every step. It's about moving even when your knees are shaking. It's about saying, I may not know the whole plan, but I trust the one who made it. It's about understanding that when you step out, heaven steps in. And let me tell you, when I've obeyed, even in uncertainty, miracles have followed. Not always instantly, not always, obviously, but always undeniably. Every breakthrough in my life began with one terrifying, uncertain, deeply obedient step, a step that didn't make sense to others, a step that required sacrifice, a step that felt like risk, but was really faith in motion. And I believe the same is available to you. But you have to act, because you can't walk into your purpose while staying anchored to your comfort. You can't reach the next level if your feet are still planted in fear. God's promises are not on hold. You are. And the moment you move, you unlock something new, not just externally, but internally. You become the kind of person who says, I don't wait for perfect peace to move. I move, and peace meets me in the process. That's what obedience is. It's choosing trust over timeline. It's choosing movement over mastery. It's choosing faith over fear. But there's one more thing you need to know. Obedience doesn't always feel like success. Sometimes it feels like sacrifice. You might obey and lose people. You might obey and feel misunderstood. You might obey and walk through the valley before you reach the mountain. But obedience is never in vain, because obedience doesn't guarantee ease, it guarantees alignment. And in alignment, you find your power, your peace, your purpose. So today, I'm not asking you to have the whole path figured out. I'm asking you to take the next step. What's the next right thing? What's the one move your spirit is nudging you to make? What's that thing that's been sitting in your heart waiting for your yes? Do it. Make the call. Send the email. Start the fast. Write the first page. Say the prayer. Walk away. Lean in. Whatever it is, do it. Because your next level is not waiting on perfect timing. It's waiting on your obedience. God will meet you on the path. He always does. But you have to move first. So go, step out, act boldly, trust deeply. Because on the other side of obedience is a life you can't even imagine yet. And it starts with one step.